Morning, or depending when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today I am showing you around from Norwich Regional Championships. I went down to the lovely Athena Games in Norwich, one of my favourite venues in the UK, and I do not mind saying that out loud. Thank you to all the people down there. They made it super easy for us to record. They made us incredibly welcome, and I thank them for it. And I recorded a whole bunch of games from their regional championship, one of which you are seeing now. The format for this is expanded and breakpoint is legal, so the format here is from black and white all the way to breakpoint. We are playing 50 minutes best of 3 black and white to breakpoint, so sit yourselves down, grab yourselves a nice beverage, hot or cold, your choice, and enjoy this game from Norwich Regional Championships. 50 minutes best of 3 black and white to breakpoint. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we've got Ollie Barnett on the left and we have got Ben Short on the right. Ollie, I believe, is going to be playing some kind of Yveltal variant, and if I remember correctly, oh, there we go, that seems pretty likely. If I remember correctly, Ben is going to be playing some kind of Seismitoad Giratina deck. So Ollie straight away plays an Ultra Ball, gets rid of a Lysander and an Energy. Remember that Energy can be recovered using a Dark Patch, which will allow him to attach it to one of his bench Dark Pokemon. And that Lysander can be recovered with a VS Seeker. And given that most people play 2 Lysander and 4 VS Seeker, he is now statistically more likely to draw into a way to hit Lysander, as he now has 5 outs to drawing a Lysander, 4 VS Seeker and a Lysander, rather than 2. The 2 Lysander. Now, the fact that he's gone for a baby Yveltal means he's probably got some way to draw cards in his deck. Oh, and he uses a Trainer's Mail, looks at the top 4 cards of his deck, grabs a Getsis. Now, that supporter is very disruptive if you play it on turn 1. Your opponent reveals their hand, shuffles all of their item cards back into their deck, and you draw 1 card for every item that they shuffle back. Oh my goodness, that is not a good Getsis. That Hooper from Ben is going to get him everything that he needs. And Ollie gets just a single card. Now, he does hit that Dark Patch, but it doesn't look like he's got much. So there is an argument there that Getsis was not the right card to play. Now, he's got the Float Stone, so he's got the turn 1 attack with Yveltal. And I know he can't attack, I'm fully aware of this. But he's leaving... this is a risky play, leaving that Shaman in the active. If Ben were to play a laser or something and leave that Shaman, obviously a heads-on crushing hammer, so that energy goes away. If we were to see something like a laser or a startling megaphone, then that Shaman could be left unable to retreat and giving Ben 2 quick prizes. So I guess this is a really good supporter to play, but when you've got nothing turn 1, and Ollie really did not have a great turn 1, he didn't even get a manual energy attachment, he had to use the Dark Patch to attach, something like an N that nets you more cards really would have been better than a Getsis. Now obviously, having seen Ben's hand, we know that an N would have been better than a Getsis, but as it stands, you know, I mean, just the fact that he played that Getsis, knowing that he needed to hit, you know, a really 3 or 4 trainers, it could have worked. It was a risky play and it didn't pay off. So we do see that Hooper coming down from Ben, and it allows him to grab any free EX Pokemon from his deck. And he's gone for a Jirachi, which has an ability that allows him to grab a supporter of his choosing, which he's going to use now, presumably to get something like a Sycamore, because he knows that Ollie hasn't got a great hand, so he will not be playing an N. Now, we know Ollie's got an N. Ben doesn't. All Ben knows is that Ollie used the Getsis for 1, didn't get a manual energy attachment, and only has an Yveltal with no energy on the field. So Ben will not be going for an N. He'll be going for a Sycamore here. And even if Ben's got a couple cards he doesn't want to discard. And he also goes for a Seismitoad and a Giratina because they are the main Pokemon in his deck. And we know he's got a double colourless energy. We saw that in his hand after the Getsis. So he's going to be able to play a double colourless energy here. He's going to put that Burbank City Gym into play. And then he's going to be able to play a Sycamore, grabbing him a fresh hand of 7 new cards. And if he can hit something like a Floatstone and a Laser, he is in control. So yeah, the only things he discards there are a Team Flare Grunt and Colrus, both of which are useful, but he can grab them back. Now, he does hit that. Is that a laser he hit there? Oh, he's got the Floatstone. Oh, it's a Team Flare. It's a Head Ringer, but that's going to be useful. because he's now going to trainer lock Ollie. Ollie's not going to be able to put down any tools because they're all item cards, which means that as soon as Ollie plays down an EX Pokemon, he's not in a position to be able to put a... And then we see the end from Ollie. Oh, well, that's actually really useful because now that head ringer's gone. But those head ringers are in Ben's deck. Ollie now doesn't have an EX down, which means when Ollie plays an EX, he's going to be item locked. He's not going to be able to attach a tool of his own choosing to one of those EXs, meaning that Ben can pop down that Headringer and increase the attack cost by 1. Not only does Headringer increase the attack cost, but it also means that he can't play something like a Fighting Fury bout to increase the HP of his Pokemon. So he does have the energy there, but he has no energy. Oh, he has 1 in his discard. Remember that the Oblivion Wing attachment is not an option. It has to be done. Oh, and here we see a Crushing Hammer. That's 2 out of 2 for Crushing Hammer, which is, yeah, pretty gosh darn good. So, yeah, that's looking pretty good for Ben here. He's got rid of Ollie's energy again. Now, it looks like Ollie's got a supporter there, which isn't too bad. Now, Ben here, he's going to start building up a Giratina. And this is what Seismitoad Giratina does, for those of you who are unaware. You got Seismitoad there who locks items, and then you've got Giratina. He needs a double colourless and a double dragon, but when you've got those energy, then your opponent can't play any special energy, tools, or stadiums, but they do get to play other item cards that are not tools. And it really depends what deck you're against. Now, Ben here, he's got 2 options. He's gone for the first because it's a quicker option. In most games, you'll lead with Seismitoad because it's 1 energy attachment rather than 2. So Ben here, he's going to lead with Seismitoad, and he's got lasers, and he's got these energy denial cards like Crushing Hammer and Team Flare Grunt, and he's going to be content to sit there for a while. If Ollie starts going a bit more aggressive, starts building something up, then Ben is going to go ahead and use something like that Giratina, because he can do 100 damage, and he can stop Ollie playing things like double colourless energy, which of course will, slow Ollie down quite nicely. So, we do see a Sycamore here from Ollie, so maybe he can get something going, but Ben is threatening with those Head Ringers, those Crushing Hammers, those Team Flare Grunts. He is threatening with all of these, and that is going to be slightly awkward. So the Caldeo goes down for Ollie. To be honest, it's not that useful. Because unless Ben doesn't attack for a turn, then he's never going to get to be able to use it. So Ben here, if he's got a Head Ringer, it can go on the Caldeo. Oh, we see another Crushing Hammer, and that's 2 for 1. I'm keeping the count this game, ladies and gentlemen. I am being nice. I'm actually remembering for a change. That Caldeo, you want to use its ability Rush In, then pop a Floatstone on so that it's got free retreat. So it's essentially a perma switch and an infinite switch. Problem is, as long as Ben attacks with Seismitoad, Ollie can't pop down a Floatstone. And as long as Ben attacks with Giratina, Ollie can't pop down a Floatstone. So, I suppose useful to have another Pokemon there, I suppose. And he could always rush in and just manually retreat if he gets 2 Dark Energy on there. But if he's using Oblivion Wing to attach 2 Dark Energy to a Keldeo just so it can retreat, that is not where you want to be, ladies and gentlemen. So Ben misses with a Crushing Hammer, but he uses the S-Seeker, gets a Team Flare Grunt, which allows him to just discard one of those energy anyway. And Ollie gets his own Jirachi down, and he grabs a Colrus, which means he shuffles his hand into his deck and draws a number of cards equal to the total number of bench Pokemon on the field, which in this case will be 7. But then, he's now got 2 weak EX Pokemon on the field. Now, one of the things about Ben's deck is it doesn't do a huge amount of damage. Seismitoad does 30 without any tools. Giratina does 100. But now, both Jirachi and that Shaman are within 1 Giratina hit of being KO'd, and that presents some easy prizes for Ben to use Lysander or whatever to get them later on. So Ben is going to be looking for some way to get rid of that double colourless energy on that Fright Night Yveltal. Now that could be slightly worrying. Fright Night Yveltal does 60 to the active and 60 to a benched EX. And again, Ben, not unlike Ollie here, has a Shaman and a Giratina on the bench, both of which are quite vulnerable to something like a Fright Night Yveltal. But as we've seen, ladies and gentlemen, already this game, Ben is playing an energy denial deck. So the chances of Ollie keeping 2 energy on that Fright Night Yveltal turn after turn is very slim. And I said he was going to go for some way to get rid of that double colourless energy. It looks like, yes, he has gone for a Xerosic, which allows him to discard a tool or special energy attached to one Pokemon on the field. Now, it can be used to get rid of something like a Team Flare, Headringer on your own Pokemon. But here it's clearly being used to get rid of that DCE. And this is what Ben's going to do for the remainder of this first game. Because he's got Ollie White right where he wants him. There will be no Dark Patch. So there will be no laser. So yeah, Ollie can attach energy manually every turn and maybe try and get an Oblivion Wing or 2 going. But we see that Ben's just getting rid of his energy as he goes. And that's what he's going to do until he's taken all of these prizes. Now, one thing that Ollie might want here is for Ben to try and transition into a Giratina, because if Ben does that, there is the possibility that Ollie can have one of those redonkulous turns where he goes Dark Patch, Laser, Manual Attachment, and Giratina does not like Yveltal EX. Yveltal EX does 20 damage. Oh, and it looks like Ollie's just scooping, and he was never going to get anything. So Ollie gives up game 1, and this is a very clever play from Ollie. He knows he's not going to win this game. He also knows that this game is going to take a very long time. So rather than sit there and lose a very long game 1 and potentially be in a situation where he doesn't have enough time to win games 2 and 3, in which case it would be a draw if he won game 2, or maybe even not enough time to win game 2 so that Ben just wins the match, Ollie's given up and said, you know what, I'm going to give up game 1. If I can win game 2, I get a draw. If I can win games 2 and 3, I get a win. That's before time runs out. And you know what? I'm not winning this game. All I'm doing by carrying on this game is giving myself less time. And if you're ahead in game 1, you want game 1 to last as long as you possibly can. You want to have the longest, slowest game 1 you can possibly get away with. At the ECC, I've told this story on my podcast, PTCGRadio. Subscribe on iTunes. I have told this story on my podcast that at the ECC, I was playing Raichu Bats against an Yveltal, and I had the win 15 minutes in. I managed to make the first game last 40 minutes. Unless I drew completely dead, which I did not, there was no way I was losing that match. Game 2, we literally had 10 minutes. There was no way my opponent was going to win, and I won the match. All I did game 2 was bench a whole bunch of stuff and use a few Ultra Balls. It really was a simple game. And so if Ben had, if that game had gone as long as it could, Ben was in a good position. Now, I was talking about that Yveltal EX against Giratina. Yveltal EX does 20 damage plus 20 for each energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. Active Pokemon. And your own active Pokemon, I should say. So a Giratina with 4 energy on is adding 80 damage. So you only need to do 100 on your side. So if you've got 4 energy, or 3 energy and a laser, or 2 energy, a laser and a muscle band, then you've got the KO on that Giratina. So there was the possibility, and we saw a trainer's mail come down and grab a Hypnotoxic Laser, and that looks like an Ultra Ball coming down with 2 Sycamores to get a Shaman. So there is a possibility here that if Ben starts attacking with Giratina, Ollie can have a redonkulous turn and go, Dark Patch, Laser. Now, of course, he can't play a Muscle Band when a Giratina attacks, but he can get free energy down and a Laser. And we see that the only stadium that Ben seems to be playing is Burbank City Gym, which is the only one that Ollie would want to be playing anyway. So, really, it's not something that Ollie is going to be... It's not something that Ben is going to be wanting to do. So we see a trainer's mail come down there for a Floatstone. Ollie would dearly love to have a Keldeo here, because especially with Trainer Lock and Laser, having that perma switch from a Keldeo EX with a Floatstone can be very useful indeed. Now, Ollie has gotten rid of... there we go. I was going to say, he's gotten rid of 2 Sycamore. Oh, not an ideal Sycamore, but what can you do? He's gotten rid of 2 Sycamore. He had better have a VS Seeker in his hand to reuse one, and he did. Now, it looks like he's got a Battle Compressor, which is a bit of a shame. Now, we saw him dump at least 1, maybe 2 Dark Patches from the Sycamore, but we know he's got a Dark Patch in hand. So he's going to be able to get an extra energy attachment from Dark Patch this turn, and that is going to allow him to maybe have a double energy attachment this turn, which is going to be very useful indeed. Try and stem that flow, and then he can try and retreat the Darkrai next turn and start, because even against something like a Seismitoad, a 2-energy Yveltal against a Seismitoad with DCE is doing a base of 100 damage. Now, he's going to want to get a tool on that Yveltal just in case a Headringer comes down. Now, he gets a manual attachment. He doesn't have a tool. Now, we see him umming and ahhing about playing that laser. He already played a laser. So does he use it, does he not? There's a very good chance he's going to be item locked next turn. So there is an argument that he should just play that laser anyway just to get it out. Now, an interesting play here, he's feeding Ben a Shaman. And what he's basically saying is, I don't want you to hit my Darkrai. That Darkrai is really useful to me. And there we go. That's why he really needed to get a tool on that Yveltal. Now Evil Ball costs 3 energy, not 2. So if Ben goes ahead and gets a Crushing Hammer and Trainer Lock, that Yveltal EX cannot attack next turn. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, he's got almost everything he needs. He's got an Ultra Ball, he's got a double colorless energy. Now, he doesn't have a Float Stone at the moment, unfortunately. But he's going to use that Ultra Ball to grab a Hooper, and assuming it's not prized, he's going to grab his Caldeo. Most of these decks only play 1. Although, to be honest, that Giratina isn't asleep, so he doesn't need a Keldeo. And he's going to be able to grab his Seismitoad. And if he doesn't have a supporter card that he wants in his hand, he's going to be able to grab a Jirachi. If he does, he's going to be able to grab a Shaman. If he can dig deep enough and grab a Float Stone and a Crushing Hammer, he is in an exceptionally good position here. So he grabs his Caldeo, he grabs a Seismitoad, and he presumably does have a supporter he likes because he goes ahead and grabs a Shaman. So here he's going to grab some more cards with Shaman, he's going to pop his Seismitoad down. We know he's got a DCE for that Seismitoad. If he can grab a Float Stone and if he can hit a Crushing Hammer, then we're right back to where we were in Game 1 very early on in Game 2. And that is going to be very, very bad for Ollie here. Because we saw what happened in Game 1. Ollie, he did everything he could. He tried as hard as he could. He gave it a good go. But the reality is there was absolutely nothing he could do. Oh, we see a computer search there and a Sycamore. So Ben is going to be able to grab whatever he wants and dig quite deeply into his deck if that particular fancy takes him. Now we see a Super Scoop up here. Now that is a Tails, leaving him on a fairly even 2 for 2 on coin flip so far, which is alright. That means he doesn't get the Giratina out the active. Now, to be honest, had he hit heads there, he could have gone for he could have used that computer search to go ahead and grab himself a Crushing Hammer, and with a heads, that's as good as game. Because Ollie cannot attach 2 energy in 1 turn. And he doesn't have a baby Yveltal down. And of course, that's the way you counter these energy denial decks. Which means that he would just be able to... Ollie attaches an energy, Ben gets rid of it, even with something like a Team Flare Grunt, and then Ollie just sits there and is a little bit sad. Now, let's not forget that if Ollie draws into Zerosic, he can get rid of that Team Flare Grunt. But then, even if he gets rid of that Team Flare Grunt, he can't attach his own tool, and there's every chance Ben's just going to grab another Team Flare Grunt. And a point that I make on these videos fairly often, if you're using your one supporter for the turn to get rid of something your opponent did, and that's it, you're probably in a fairly nice position indeed. So Ben plays, and he does actually see Ben does draw a Headringer, and he grabs a Muscle Band, which is quite useful for his Toad. He never got one of them in the previous game. Now, does he have a Crushing Hammer? Because here is the awkward thing, or even a laser to try and put that Shaman to sleep. Because now, Ben does 50 damage, but if Ollie's got an energy, and he does, okay, Ollie is going to get an attack here, and it's going to be a big un. Oh, Ollie plays a gets this here, potentially awkward. Oh my goodness. Once again, not a great use of it. Not a great use at all. Now, we see, interestingly, when Ben used his Hooper, he didn't go for a Giratina. Now, even when I was suggesting, I said, well, he's going to go for a Keldeo, and he's going to go for a Toad, and he's going to go for a Shaman. Why did he not go for a Giratina? Well, we saw in the previous game, and I explained at the beginning of this game with Yveltal EX. Ollie really doesn't want to be playing against a Seismitoad. He wants to be facing a Giratina. Now, Ollie does 120 with that Yveltal, and now he's doing some good. He's putting a little bit of pressure on, because Ben needs to do one of two things here. Either he needs to heal that Seismitoad, maybe bench a Seismitoad and hit a Super Scooper, maybe even just bench a Seismitoad, attach a DCE, rush in, retreat. Or he needs to get rid of 2 energy from Ollie, or get rid of 1 energy and hope he doesn't have a replacement. Because if Ollie attacks that Seismitoad with that Yveltal next turn, Ollie's going ahead in the game. And this is what Ollie wants. This is what Yveltal wants to do against these Toad-Tina decks. Yveltal wants to put a bunch of energy on Yveltal EX and smash. Oh, sorry, one of the reasons he didn't go for a Giratina, he already had a Giratina on the bench. Although I stand by my original point of he wants to be using Seismitoad. Now, here's the awkward bit here. He needed to get a supporter, so rather than attaching rather than benching a Seismitoad, attaching a DCE, which he had, he used a Jirachi to go and grab a supporter, and he only had 1 bench space, so he could only do 1 or t'other. And what Ben's basically thinking here is, look, oh, and then we see a tool scrapper, getting rid of those tools. What Ben's thinking is, look, if I carry on... Oh, and then we see a Headringer onto the Darkrai. And we see a laser. This flip's huge. It's a Tails. So now, in terms of useful coin flips, Ben is now hitting less than 50%. Here's the thing. This game is now going in Ollie's way. Ollie's getting a KO here. And Ben now is going to be attacking with a Giratina. Now, if I were Ben, oh, and Ollie just does nothing, so if he'd have hit 1 Team Flare Grunt or something like that, he would have been okay. Now, if I were Ben, I probably would have just gone straight Seismitoad there. Bent Seismitoad, attached DCE. Look, you've got Jirachi. If he takes a KO, then you can play the Jirachi. Force him to have a Lysander to take a KO. Give yourself more time to try and get rid of his energy. Because here, Ben is in a position where Ollie's got free energy on an Yveltal, and Ben has got to attack with a Giratina. Now, honestly, like I say, last turn, I would have benched a Seismitoad, attached a DCE, rush in retreat, attacked with Seismitoad, and then hoped he didn't have a Lysander. But even if he did, then I can use my Jirachi and grab a supporter. Because if you don't use a Jirachi, then you're losing anyway in terms of giving up. You're just giving up 2 prizes. I'd rather force... Oh, my goodness. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is a Getsis. Oh, now, that's not so bad. Now, was that 6 off the Getsis? It was 6 off that Getsis. Now, Ollie has a Shaman in hand, which means that next turn... Well, Ollie can't play the Verbank because, Giratina's going to attack. But Ollie can Shaman for a minimum of 4 cards next turn. And he's got a bench space to do it. But then again, that Giratina has a muscle band attached. Now, he is going to KO this Yveltal this turn, and then he can one-hit KO any Shaman on the field. So actually, let's go back to the dilemma from the previous turn. Does Ben start building up the Giratina and then play Jirachi for Sycamore? Or does Ben just grab a second Seismitoad? It looks like I was wrong and Ben made the correct decision. Because Ben gave up 2 prizes. He basically let Ollie KO his Seismitoad. Well, that's not ideal. But then he knew, well, let's face it, Ollie's going to have an Yveltal with 60 damage. Which means I can KO it with Giratina. And then I can basically KO all of this stuff. And now, although Ollie's got his items back, he's not got his DCEs. He can't put down a stadium. This is wrong, Ollie. You cannot put down a stadium after your opponent attacks with Giratina. That is one of the things that Giratina does. He is drawing an extra card off of that Seismitoad, which he shouldn't be doing. What it's basically done is it has allowed him to draw one extra card off of that Seismitoad, which he should not be allowed to draw. This, and somebody pointed out in one of my videos the other day, oh, for goodness sake, this seems to happen on every video, on every one of Ross's videos. Let me make it clear, ladies and gentlemen, this ain't my fault. This is not on me. People, and this happens. Now, if this happens, now let's be clear, on stream it is more nerve-wracking. People are more likely to make mistakes because they're feeling a bit more pressure. And Ollie here, he's one game down and this second game is not going like he would want to. However, think of how many little mistakes happen in games that we don't notice. Neither player has noticed that Ben attacked with a Giratina and then Ollie put down a stadium and then drew an extra card with Shaman. Now, Giratina's attack reads, your opponent can't play any Pokemon tool, special energy, or stadium cards from his or her hand during his or her next turn. Ben took the KO with Giratina and Ollie straight away went ahead and played a stadium. It ain't my fault, ladies and gentlemen. Neither of these players noticed the mistake, and that's not on me. But imagine how often these mistakes happen when we're not watching it back. Neither player noticed. If I hadn't recorded this game, we would be completely ignorant of that misplay. So, you know, unfortunately these things happen. And yes, I'm willing to bet they happen more often on stream because of the simple fact that people are under a little bit more pressure. Now that Giratina is poisoned, which means as well as Ollie drawing an extra card, he has done 20 more damage than he should have. That Giratina should be on 50, it should not be on 70. So we see a laser here, and presumably we're going to see a rush in retreat, and then we're going to see a KO on that Yveltal with Giratina. Now, has Ben attached an energy this turn? It looks like he has got a double dragon in hand, so he's going to want to attach that. And then either a double dragon or a DCE next turn is going to allow him to get a KO on most things. Now we see a crushing hammer come down here. That's a tails. Clearly wanted to get rid of that energy on that benched Yveltal. We see another crushing hammer, and now he does get ahead and gets rid of the energy on that benched Yveltal. And we see a rush in retreat to get rid of the poison here. And then we see a KO from the Giratina. So some good play from both players here. Ollie, he's doing the right thing. If you can't build up a big Yveltal EX, and we see Ollie there getting rid of a special energy and a tool. So he does know what Giratina's attack does, or at least to some degree. But this game is basically over here. Ollie is not going to be able to build up enough energy in one turn to really do something here. Now, there is a possibility he hits an energy dark patch if he hasn't used all 4 already. I'm sure he's used at least 3, but he might have a 4th. Now, if he can hit an energy dark patch, then he will get the KO. Because he'll be doing 120, which will put him up to... No, sorry, he'll be doing 140, which will be more than enough. Oh, he's got the dark patch, so he hadn't used all 4. If he's got an energy in hand... Oh, it's a moot point. I'm sitting here thinking if he's got an energy in hand, he's going to make a game of this. Well, no, he's not, because how's he going to get that Yveltal out of the active? So all that's going to happen here is that Ben is going to try and play a laser if he's got one, a Lysander if he doesn't. Oh, and that looks like another tail. So in meaningful coin flips, there might be a couple lasers that didn't mean anything that I missed. Ben is actually only hitting 3 out of 8 here. 3 out of 9 here. So he's actually hitting 1/3 on these meaningful coin flips. So let's have no accusations that he's flipping well to win. Now, we do see a Sycamore here. Has he hit a laser? Does he have any laser left in his deck? He's currently hitting for 120. With a laser, he'd hit 130 and get the KO, meaning that next turn he could just play a Lysander on a Shaman and take the win. Because Shaman has 110 HP and Giratina has 120. Now, he's hit Oh, so yeah, he has hit heads there. And what that allows him to do is pick up the Giratina with all the damage on, then he puts down the DCE muscle band on the other Giratina, and it's like a complete full healing of that Giratina with no real downside. Okay, he is an energy attachment behind, and if Ollie pulled off a gigantic one-hit KO this turn, then that would really come back to bite him, but I think Ollie would need 2 energy for that. Yeah, Ollie would need 2 energy and a laser in order to get a KO here. And I'm fairly sure he's out of dark patches now. So even if Ollie hits a laser and an energy, the only thing he's doing here is 170, which wouldn't get the KO because, of course, the rush in retreat would stop the poison getting the KO after Ben's turn. So I was talking about Ollie doing the right thing with Baby Yveltal, hey Nick, and essentially he was doing the exact right thing. Of course, the flip here makes no difference because of Caldeo. And the correct play here, the right thing to do, is to go Baby Yveltal, Oblivion Wing onto a Baby Yveltal, and then just Oblivion Wing between the two so you never run out of energy. Of course, it doesn't work if your opponent is getting rid of all your energy and playing lasers and blah, blah, blah. So annoyingly, Ben did not get the KO last turn, but he's going to get the KO this turn, and then he's going to want to try and make sure he has a Lysander in hand. If he's got a Lysander in hand, then that means that he's just going to be able to go ahead and grab a Shaman, take the last 2 prizes for the win. Now, in this game, there's no reason for Ollie to scoop early. You might as well play the game out, because if he scoops this game, he loses the entire match. So you play it out, and you hope that something happens. You hope that you get a monster turn, or you hope that your opponent runs out of options, or has an energy drought, or whatever. Well, this is interesting. He's pulling up the Shaman a turn early. This is interesting. Because what he's basically doing here is he's, rather than going down to 1 prize remaining, he's going down to 2 prizes remaining. Which means Ollie could end him to 1 next turn rather than end him to 2. It also means that Ollie could put up something like a Keldeo or a Darkrai, and then Ben would need another Lysander to win the game next turn. Although, let's be very clear on this, ladies and gentlemen. There is almost no chance of Ollie doing anything to change the outcome of this game. Now, he gets an attack here. Okay, and he gets the KO. Now things are interesting. Now Ben is going to need a Lysander and an energy to get the KO. Whereas had he just KO'd the Yveltal last turn, then this turn he would need a Lysander, which we knew he had, and an energy in order to get the KO. So Ollie is making things interesting at the end. As Ben hits a Crushing Hammer, Ollie does not have much energy remaining. And Ben's actually got a Team Flare Grunt in his hand, so he can, I think, if he hasn't, I don't think he's played a supporter yet, so we can actually, no he hasn't, because we can see that Giratina and Crushing Hammer are the 2 top things on his discard pile. So Ben is actually going to be able to play a Team Flare Grunt here to get rid of that last energy, and I really don't think there is any way back there from Ollie. Of course, the other option that Ben's got here is, and there we go, Ben can just sit there behind a Keldeo and wait. But, and there's a laser. And he hits the heads. So it could be that next turn he just needs an energy. That Yveltal will already be on 60 damage, so Ben can just go ahead and bring up that Giratina and hit for 120 and the game. So Ollie's made things interesting in this game. He showed us the power of Yveltal EX. But it's not really done him much good, unfortunately. There really isn't very much he could do, and there isn't really very much he did do. And yes, it's a shame, and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Ben has played his deck very well, and this is what Ben's deck is supposed to do. It is supposed to win in this manner. It is energy denial, and it is a lock deck. And he's locked Ollie down, and he's denied him of energy. So as we whittle down this game, ladies and gentlemen, might I remind you, please, to click that like button. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. Have you done it yet? Thank you very much. Consider yourself a lovely person. Make sure you subscribe to PTCGRadio if you haven't done so. And if you have, go and get a friend to subscribe. We are careening towards 3,000. It's making me happy, but we're not there. We are not yet there, ladies and gentlemen. And your help would be very much appreciated. And if you want to call either player or myself an idiot, that is what the comments are for. Or you can make a constructive comment, but I know how YouTube works. And of course, the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio. Oh, actually, just before we go, I haven't said this yet, a huge thank you to all at Athena Games for making us very welcome, making this very easy, and thank you to Ollie and Ben for agreeing to be on stream.